I love these times with you too.
Hi, my name is Brenda Reese. I'm a relationship mentor and forgiveness coach. And welcome to today. I'm really glad that you're tuning in. And I am with my friend and colleague, Kim. And we have been really enjoying, hopefully you are too, the discussions that we've been having every Thursday at 9 a.m. on social media channels. And today we have a really spicy topic that both of us can relate to, and I'm sure you can too, because it's quite common, which is releasing resentments with siblings. Kim.
I know it's a big one. I have to tell you, this is probably, I've had some emotional responses to some of our different topics, and this is the first one I was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm ready to do this one. This is definitely one in my particular world that I haven't gotten to any of the other side with yet. So I don't have any insights, or I don't have any look how cool I am because I figured part of this out on my own thing going on here. But it's interesting. And I mean, one of my favorite relationships in my whole life growing up was my sister, right? Like I remember that relationship being the most important one to me. We've, since had some situations. I'm not going to, sugarcoat it too much, but, I've made some mistakes in my life, and that caused a really big trauma between my sister and I, older in our lives. But even younger, in our lives, as much as she was my favorite relationship in the whole world, there was definitely some stuff for me. I was the older sister, she was the prettier one, and I had, there's this stuff that goes around about it. So I think it's interesting about how the relationships between our siblings, how that falls apart, and what's created by that. So it's a really big conversation, right? And I'm not sure
Yes.
100% where to start, but that's why you're the expert. Maybe let's talk a little bit. That's why you're here, because if it were just me, terrible, terrible life. Let's maybe start with just, I don't know, like how those resentment patterns, maybe how they begin, how we get there with them, and how we can start untangling those to get back to a healthier relationship with admittedly probably one of the most intimate and important relationships I think you have in your life is a sibling. You're literally doing all the stuff together.
Right. And depending upon how much the age difference is, right, between the siblings, but a lot of them are closer. And, you get some that are 2 years apart, some that are 6, some are 8. Some are even longer than that. So it's almost like I've had clients with this multitude of situations. And even though a lot of times we look at the parenting style, because the parenting style does dictate how the relationships go a lot of times with the siblings. And that's something we want to really look at, because it's normal. Like therapists will tell you, the psychology world says it's kind of normal to have a little bit of resentment or a little tit for tat between siblings, right? Because you're close, you're in this environment. And so what you do though is it's depends upon we're going to start here with the parenting conflict resolution skills, right? Whether they have that,
Right.
because as you're like, that's mine. No, that's mine. She touched me. Okay, that's from mine, right?
Right. Yeah.
You
She
know,
breathed the air I wanted to.
exactly, because it's normal. I think with siblings too, and this is what's really important, is we learn communication skills, we learn relationship skills. Not only do we watch our parents, but we are practicing with our siblings.
We are.
And so if one, and this is going to jump a little bit, I'm going to jump a little bit, but if we have any kind of jealousy, if we have any kind of she's getting more attention than I am, or he's getting more attention than I am, or they are, then that's going to cause some conflict. Some of my clients have had siblings that were sick.
Yeah.
They had things going on, and so the parent was more paid more attention to the other child.
Yep.
I've also had ones where one child is a little bit more troublesome than the other, so the good child or the quiet child gets ignored because she can handle it, or he can handle it, or they can handle it. But inside is resentment.
Yeah.
So there's these dynamics growing up that needs to be paid attention to. And what I suggest doing is kind of taking a look at where you are, where you feel as a listener, where you feel that there was a lack, where you feel like it's like, okay, I can say my brother in my own story got more attention because he was the boy.
Right. And I love what you just said, in your own story. And not that it didn't necessarily happen that way, but right, we are going to perceive things differently.
Right, in our own story. So it doesn't matter. So this is the interesting thing too, because what my sister and I have different ideas of what it was like growing up.
Yeah.
She had different parents than I did, even though
Yeah.
there's 6 years difference. My younger sister's 8 years difference and brother, they had a different mom, right? And dad
Yeah.
than I did. Well, actually
Yeah.
more mom because the dads were gone. But they had a different parent because depending upon where us as parents or our parents were, we're going to get either the really strict one, we're going to
Yep.
get the really lenient one, we're going to get the one that's learned themselves to
Yep.
be able to handle kids better, to be able to listen, to be able to, and I don't know, you and I growing up, we didn't get that parent that said, well, let's talk about this, honey.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't,
I
right?
was actually, I will tell you, I was pretty fortunate. My mom was young when she had me, and so we kind of raised each other
Yes.
together, right? We have a
Yeah.
really interesting dynamic with that.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, right? It really does depend on where your parents are in their life, in their own growth, in their own trauma, on which parent you get,
Yeah.
even if it's the same human beings, right? Same
Yes.
human beings, fast forward 5 years later, things can be different. And now these two siblings who are growing up in the same house, although living, parallel lives, are living very different experiences.
They are. And, and then you've got the size of the family dynamic. So we had three. I'm the youngest of three. Then we jumped to nine, right? When my mom remarried.
Yeah.
So there's this dynamic too. I'm the youngest child because then you have the oldest child because there's some talk now about the eldest daughter syndrome
Yeah.
going on around where they're an overachiever, they have responsibility, right? Very driven, taken care of, and they kind of missed out on a little bit of childhood,
Yeah.
right? So I go from youngest to middle, then I went to oldest of the young ones.
Right.
So I have this dynamic where I'm kind of the baby of the family, get some attention, middle child, forgotten, oldest child, way too much responsibility.
Yep.
So of course, there's anger and resentment. And the thing is like a lot of us learn to shove that down,
Yep.
right? Or we take it out on our siblings, like my brother who was angry took it out on me, right?
Right.
Because he was next in line to me. So he took that out on me. And there's also these other dynamics of so it's taking a look at where are you at in this line?
Yeah.
Who is it that you have the resentment with? And let's take a look. Let's in your own story, no matter what any other sibling says, no matter what your parents say, especially because they're going to have a whole different view. Well, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can look at this story like I did, I had a step brother situation that where some sexual abuse happened with me. And, and so getting to look at being abused by the older brother and then having this situation with the stepbrother, I didn't have very good feelings about the brothers. And then, my oldest sister being abusive because she was put into a mother role, youngest sister, feeling left out. It was a crazy mess. And being able to do this forgiveness work, being able to look at my story, doesn't matter about anybody else's, because my oldest sister, who I'm closest to, now she has a whole different view of what happened. And so being able to look at your own story is so valuable. Having this story witnessed and validated, having yourself be seen and heard, and then taking some steps that you can take regarding what was the situation, what did happen there as much as you can
Right.
decipher and tell. And
Right.
then the other thing is to be able to feel your feelings around it.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because and sometimes these like my oldest brother ended up just like getting so angry at the family, causing chaos and then disappearing,
Yeah.
right? Leaving everybody kind of hanging and especially my mom at that time, and she died shortly thereafter, and that was pretty chaotic,
Yeah.
right? And so but we have to let each person have their experience. So if you're experiencing a situation where you are in in kind of this resentment or anger or this estrangement from a sibling, taking a look at the story, yours,
Right.
right? The feelings around it, which is so valuable, and then deciding, do I want to have an interaction with this person?
Yeah.
And then, because the other one might not want to take those steps, if you really want a relationship, then we can take steps towards that. Like we've talked about in other lives about writing out the letter or contacting and saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk with you." There are
Yes.
things that we can do to be able to increase that relationship or to reconcile. If we don't want to reconcile, there is still work we can do around the resentment and the anger because there's a lot of times where siblings were abusive. There was situations where they're emotionally, physically, and I have a situation with two people in my family that one was so abusive to the other and they don't talk to each other.
Right.
The one's like going, "What's the problem?" And the other one's going, "You were mean to me and you weren't nice to me, and I'm never talking to you again."
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's justifiably, right? Like it's not about just because you're my sibling means I have to forgive you no matter what. And I don't feel like we're saying that at
No.
all. But I think that I love what you said about whatever the story is for you is valid. And I think that that's really maybe the part that I needed to hear. Thanks for Kim's therapy session. Because I think that regardless of not what the truth is. I'm not saying skew the truth, but I'm saying, I have a different experience in my head. I have a different story. I have a different feeling about whatever this was than probably my sibling does, my sister does. And not that I didn't take that into account, but even when you said that, my whole body went, okay, well, wait, I can work with that. That doesn't make me feel anxious. That makes me feel like, okay, let me validate my story first. Let me do my work with my story first, validate that, whatever those experiences were that were done to me, whatever those experiences were that I might have done to her, right?
Mhm.
Whatever those are, I love you saying, let's validate that story first, because then I feel like from there, align with a great coach, and then we can start moving through some of those things. But if you don't have your story validated first, then you're just poking at holes.
Oh, correct. Well, and then the resentment builds. Because
That,
the one thing that we want is there's a part of us, and I'm really big on the inner family, right? I'm on the inner family systems, right? So there's parts of us that did not have a voice. They weren't seen and heard. They were abused. And there's parts of us that sit there and it's like, no, I'm not, no,
right.
because there's hurt. There's
Yeah,
hurt there. There's
valid.
wounds. There's a lot of things that took place, regardless of what anybody else says. It's your story and we work with that story. And then the other part of this is understanding what resentment does to us.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter about the other person.
No, it
And
doesn't.
this is something that I've really been looking at lately for people and myself is knowing what it does to our nervous system, knowing what it does to our heart, knowing what it does to our brain cells because of the stress, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And knowing that as long as we harbor resentment, we are the ones that suffer,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of what
Yeah.
we do with the relationship, regardless, there are ways that we can learn to be aware of what's going on with ourselves. We can take responsibility. Like you said, okay, I've hurt her too. I get to, what I'm hearing is I get to take responsibility for that part. But we
Yeah.
don't jump to that
Right.
because you need to be seen and heard first and
Right.
understood that parts of you. And then you can go into this is my part. Okay, I understand that. Then we can bring in some more of that compassion, but we can't jump there.
Right. Well,
That's
you
so
can't even
cool.
implement any tools if we haven't identified the story and the what and the how and the who, and like develop the story first, get
Yes.
comfortable with that, because then with a coach you can kind of piece by piece start to unravel that and then find places and strategies for resolution.
Absolutely, because the story, when you talk with a coach, the story isn't told the same way. When you talk
Right.
to a coach, like what I say with my clients is, you're going to tell me that story that's been going on in your head for 20 years or 10 years or whatever it is. You're going to, not that you're going to tell me that story, but you're going to tell me that story the last way, the last time the same way,
Yep.
so that you can get relief because it's on a loop. Our brains like that, right? It kind of
Yep.
keeps it safe. I'm going to keep the story going so I can stay safe because I don't want that to ever happen again.
Right.
And the other part is like this also goes with those of us that are also the ones that have caused the hurt,
Yeah.
right? Like we talked about last
Yeah.
time, where we've caused the
Yep.
hurt too. It's the same thing. Our story still needs to be validated because, the old saying, we hear it, hurt people hurt people. And so we get to understand what is it that's causing that and how ready are we? Because this is the other thing is we don't jump to forgiveness. We
Right.
don't jump to just like everything's okay because that causes issues too. That's what I did most of my life. Everything's okay. And then I end up with adrenal fatigue, a back fusion, neck fusion, and a brain tumor,
Well,
right?
I mean, no, it's fine.
I know exactly. So I'm really a proponent of let's clear this out.
Yeah.
Let's really let you be witnessed and validated. Let's look at the story and let's see where we can have some understanding and compassion, where we can then learn to take responsibility and then decide from there. That's the only place we can decide
Right.
from.
Well, and I love that too, because again, right, I think it's really easy to be the person that was hurt. I think it's easy. I don't mean easy. I think it feels better to be the person who was the person that was hurt to try to work through this stuff, because then you can say, by no fault of my own, this was done to me, even though depending on your belief system, that may or may not be true, right? That this was done to me, I'm going to forgive that person. But I also think it takes a lot of courage to be the person that says, yeah, things are done to me. I have hurt and injury. Also, I did some hurting and I want to work through that as well, because if I really want to move through this, if I really want to get to the other side of anything and start to either heal a relationship or bless and release it lovingly,
Yeah,
right? I need to be able to tell the truth about what was done, even in my own story, right? To
right.
myself. And it's
Yeah,
really easy to go, no, 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 I didn't do anything wrong. They
right.
took it
Yeah,
wrong. So
yeah.
I love that we're having this conversation too, because I think that it takes a lot of I don't know, just self-reflection and courage to be able to say, yeah, I did some hurting and I want to look at that too.
Absolutely, because it takes 2. It does take 2. And even though one part may be more minimal than the other, it's really important to be able to, 1, is have the awareness around what that is, your story,
Yeah,
and
your
have it
story.
in front of someone who can take a look at it and see the patterns and beliefs in the story. So you're not just regurgitating the story the same way. And
Right.
then, right? And then being able to take those bits and pieces and go, okay, we're going to work on these so that you can get some peace and understanding and compassion within yourself, because that's what we don't have. So
Right.
that you can look in the mirror and go, I like this person. And maybe I'm even willing to love this person, right? Me first,
Me. Yep.
me, us, ourselves first. And then we can go into, okay, what's the responsibility? Which brings us to choice, because then we can go, okay, now how can I approach this person, not approach this person? How can I let this go and still feel the emotional freedom
Yeah.
that I have had a grip on
Yeah.
for all of my life or most of my life or some of my life? And then be able to decide, okay, because then if we don't reconcile, we still want to feel okay. we still want to feel that love within ourselves, and we don't want to hold the resentment so that every time we see someone who looks like them or their name or whatever, that we are just pissed off, we're angry, or we're running and hiding. You
Right,
know,
or being able to have a childhood memory, right? Like I think that there's something to that, and I promise we'll wrap up here in
yeah,
two shakes because I talk, but it's even if there's this angst and this hardship in a relationship, it kind of robs you of your delightful childhood memories because you can't even
yeah,
have those safely because it will trigger that feeling of guilt, feeling of shame, feeling
yes,
of anger, feeling of resentment, feeling of maybe there isn't any good in that childhood upbringing, but maybe there was some things that you could find some joy or some peace in. And I
yes.
think that when we don't have a path to forgiveness, even if it doesn't involve the other person, it robs us of so much more than just that relationship.
It does, and thank you for saying that because it does. And, the ideal situation would be to be able to have a conversation with that sibling and be able to say, "Hey, this is what's going on for me. This is my memories, my thoughts," and be able to hear the other person. That would be phenomenal, and be able to be heard from both sides. A lot of time that's not available,
Right.
but by doing this work, what I did, because my childhood was dark,
Yeah.
and I didn't really have any joy when I looked back at my memories until I did this work. And seriously, I remember the one day just like going, "Oh my God," a memory came and I felt good about it. I felt happy. And it was like, there is joy there.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that.
So, what yeah, and thank you for saying that because it was like, I mean, it really I felt it through my whole body, and it shifted what I call reframed how I was looking at my childhood, and that's powerful.
It is powerful.
Yeah. So I know we were a little bit all over the place with our conversation today. I hope it made sense for you, the listener, because you're the reason why we do this, and also our own, therapy sessions too. But
Yeah. I
um,
mean, thanks.
but really, I'd love to know what you think about this. What is your experience with sibling and forgiveness? What is your stories? I would really like to know. Please comment. Please reach out on any of the social media platforms. Please DM me if you feel better with that way, or send me an email. And I'd like to know your story. And I'd also like to know, what else do you want to know about? Because Kim and I would love to be able to share what really resonates for you. And until next time, we hope that you have a really wonderful day. And I want you to feel a heart full day. Take care.